How's it going, you awesome bunch of bakers? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have another Christmas recipe, a Christmas tree shaped focaccia, or at least that's what it's supposed to be. Let's go to the kitchen and check it out. It took me a few good tries to make this focaccia look like a Christmas tree. A simpler design is definitely better. I think it turned out pretty well, but never mind the looks. This thing is super delicious. Studded with cherry tomatoes, smoked pancetta, fresh thyme, topped with crunchy sea salt, and of course plenty of olive oil. And the best part is that it's super easy to make. I know I always say that, but it's true. This is a cold fermented no knead recipe. So we'll just mix up the dough, chill it down in the fridge, give it a couple of folds, and then forget about it. It is so easy to fit it into your schedule that there is no reason not to make it. And of course you can top it with whatever you like. So let's just get to it and see what we need to make this. Most of the dough is white bread flour, but for extra flavor and texture, we'll use some whole wheat flour as well. Then we'll need some water, some yeast, some salt, some olive oil, and for toppings, I'm using cherry tomatoes, fresh thyme leaves, and some smoked pancetta. But it's your focaccia, use whatever you like. But I would suggest using the cherry tomatoes, as they really make it look like a Christmas tree. As for the equipment, we'll use a large baking tray lined with non-stick paper, a bowl, scales, dough scraper, and a temperature probe. Okay, my kitchen is around 23 degrees Celsius, which is about 74 degrees Fahrenheit, and since this is a no-knead recipe, it is not going to warm up that much during mixing. That's why I'm using about room temperature water. We're aiming for a final dough temperature of around 24 to 25 degrees Celsius. So if your kitchen is warmer, use cooler water. If it's cooler, use warmer water. Okay, let's start making this dough. In a large bowl, combine the water, yeast, salt, the whole wheat flour, and the olive oil. Then give it all a good mix. You want to dissolve the salt completely. Because we are not kneading this dough, this is our only chance to do it. After dissolving the salt, add the final ingredient, the white bread flour. Now grab your scraper and mix it to a dough. Mix it until there is no dry flour left, then scrape it all together. Once that's done, we can check the temperature and see where we're at. And as you can see, it's 24 degrees Celsius, so it's just about right. If your dough is slightly warmer or slightly cooler, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. Now we can cover this up, pop it in the fridge, and leave it to chill down for 30 minutes. We are not kneading this dough, but we do have to do something in order to build some tension into it, and we'll achieve that by giving the dough a couple of folds. And this is how we'll do it. Wet your hand and your scraper with some water, then release the dough from the bowl. Now pull the dough up and fold it over itself, and then just keep repeating this as you turn the bowl and go around in a circle. You'll feel it getting tighter and tighter as you fold it. You should go around at least until you reach the point where you started. If the dough starts sticking to your hand too much, simply wet it with water and continue. Water will always be your best friend when handling sticky dough like this. Here's another thing you can do when the dough becomes too tight to fold. You can pick it up and then push the sides down and back up into the middle. This helps it tighten even more. Just don't overdo it, otherwise the surface will rip. Okay, after the folding, place the dough back into the bowl, cover it up and pop it back into the fridge for another 30 minutes of chilling. We'll give it one more fold just for good measure. Once again, wet your hands, release the dough from the bowl, but this time, before you fold it, you want to flip it upside down. The seam is on the bottom, so if we were to fold it as it sits, we would be technically unraveling it. And finish the fold the same way as before. Pick the dough up and push it down and back up into itself. And when you place it into the bowl, the smooth side should be pointing up again. I'm not using my lid anymore because it's not airtight. There's quite a large gap between it and the bowl. It would make the dough dry out in the fridge, because now it will spend quite a long time in there, 12 to 24 hours. How long you leave yours is up to you. My fridge is around 5 degrees Celsius or 41 Fahrenheit for reference. If yours is cooler, you can certainly leave your dough in there for longer. I left mine for almost 24 hours, and it has puffed up beautifully. And now it's time to shape it. Dust your dough and dust your table generously with flour, tip the dough out, then flatten it and shape it into a rough triangle shape. But don't make it too big, because it has to fit on your baking tray. Right after stretching it out, we need to trim it to give it even more of a triangle shape. And it's always best to use your scraper to draw the lines first and then cut. Next up, cut the ends off of the trimmings. We're doing this for two reasons. For one, it'll make the trimmings fit where we need them to go. And secondly, these little pieces will form our Christmas tree trunk. Now, I don't know, perhaps there is a better way of doing this, a more efficient way. And if you have any suggestions about that, let us know down in the comments. Okay, move the triangle shaped dough over to the baking paper. Wet your fingers with water and brush the bottom edge of it. The water will act as glue here. Now take one of the trimmed off pieces and stick it to the bottom of the triangle. Pinch the two together using your fingertips. And now repeat the same steps with the other piece. And finally, take the 2 smaller trimmings and place them underneath the dough on the bottom. And there you go, that's one way to shape a Christmas tree. But we're not done yet, because the final touches will be done before baking. Before that, we need to clean down the mess, dust this dough lightly with flour, cover it up so it doesn't dry out, and leave it for the final proof. It should not take more than 1 hour. During the final proof, you want to preheat your oven to 220 degrees Celsius, fan off. And that is 428 degrees Fahrenheit for my American friends. Don't expect your dough to puff up massively, but there should definitely be a visible difference. Mine has puffed up pretty well. It's ready for final shaping and baking. You can see me dusting the areas that I'm intending to cut with some flour. This will just prevent the scraper from sticking too much. Those 2 little cuts I added at the very top are totally unnecessary, so don't do them. 2 cuts on either side is more than enough. Now it's time to decorate. You can go quite heavy with the toppings here. I made sure that almost the whole surface of the dough was covered. And again, use whichever ingredients you want to use. But you must admit that the cherry tomatoes definitely fit in here. There are a couple more final touches that we can add. Just like most focaccia, it benefits from a good sprinkling of sea salt. While the pancetta is definitely salty, for me the bread wasn't salty enough the first time I made it, without adding the sprinkling of sea salt. But of course that's up to your preference. Finally, give it a good drizzle of olive oil, because that never hurt anyone. And before it goes into the oven, we need to make sure that the toppings stay put, so poke them into the dough. Press all the cherry tomatoes and the pancetta right down to the table. Now carefully place your focaccia on your baking tray. Now's your last chance to fix up the shape. Use your scraper to spread the branches apart. The dough will spread out and puff up quite a lot as it bakes, so you don't want the gaps to be too small. Okay, let's get this bad boy in the oven. It'll take around 22 to 25 minutes, depending on your oven. Bake it until the whole surface is beautifully golden brown. And if yours needs longer, then leave it for longer. The first time I baked mine, it took 22 minutes. The second time it took 25. But regardless of how long it takes, this is what it should look like when it's done. Who needs Christmas tree shaped sweets if you can make something like this? This thing is absolutely beautiful. And don't even get me on the taste and texture of it. It is so light and tender. The acidity and sweetness of the tomatoes, along with the salty bacon, with herbal thyme flavor in the background, you just can't beat it. It's like the fanciest bacon sandwich ever. I would definitely suggest doubling the recipe and making 2, because I almost demolished the whole thing by myself. It went down so easily and disappeared in no time. All you need to do now is go and make yours. So what do you think of my Christmas tree efforts? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this one, click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.